Assuming you are not a time traveler, it is now the end and the start of a new year, and that means it's time to put together my 2020 reading goals. So I wanted to share them with you, my pals, my comrades in reading and nerdiness and all that good stuff, what my plans are for the coming year. Let's do this. My first goal or change is in complete contradiction to the How to Set a Reading Challenge video I made just a few weeks ago, but I think it actually makes sense for me this year. Usually at the start of every year when I'm making my reading challenge, I ask myself what my big number goal is for the year. What number of books do I want to read? And then I break it up from there. Something about finally accomplishing my 3 years running goal of getting 120 books read and finally doing that, finally achieving it, has sort of made a switch flip in my head a little bit. That was such a big number for me. It felt so lofty, and now that I finally met it, I almost want to do something really different because I don't think that I can really beat that. I'm not sure if I want to set a goal number-wise that would beat that because it's just too much, and I've noticed that there are some reading habits that are affected by having such a big number goal. Because I'm always trying to read so many book number wise, I tend to put off longer books or books that might seem too challenging or like insert excuse here. I tend to put those off because I'm thinking about how I want to finish 10 for the month, so I'm less likely to read certain things because of the time commitment they take. So I'm actually taking a step back from that big overarching number this year, and I'm choosing instead to set a page number goal and not a book number goal. Instead of counting the number of books I'm reading in the year, I'm going to focus instead on counting the number of pages I'm reading. So that way I'm focusing more on the content and not just sort of these individual markers, if that makes sense. 120 books in 2019 came out to almost 39,000 pages. So this year, I think I'm going to aim for 30,000 pages. And if I go above it, great. If I go below it, great. I'm just trying to focus more on the content this year and less on the number, which is really weird for me. And frankly, I think it's going to be hard for me in my mindset of setting these habits within myself to go for 10 every month for 3 years. 3 years of going for 10 books every month is a long time, and you kind of get that in the back of your head constantly. So I think that'll be a challenge in itself to let go of that a little bit. I might still set a smaller monthly book number because I think it helps me, like maybe 7 books or something, or set a monthly page count, 3,000 or 3,200 pages for the month, and I'm just going to play with that over the first quarter and see how it goes. That's probably the biggest switch for me, is switching my thinking from a book number to a page number, and we'll see how that goes. It might be more challenging in some ways because it's not as easy to record, it's not as easy to compare either. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. Let me know if you think this is a mistake or a good idea. I'd love to hear your thoughts and your feedback. With that being said, one of my goals is to not be afraid of the bigger books, to just accept that these larger books do take more time and not be afraid to invest that time in them. Don't feel like I have to rush through it just to get to the next one. Now, obviously, this isn't to say that I don't read complex or challenging books, but I do notice that I put them off, or I'm less inclined to choose them compared to a 400-page like mystery thriller. So I'm just wanting to open the door for myself in that capacity and be a little forgiving, a little gracious about the differences in those reading styles. My third goal is almost identical to a reading goal I had in 2019, which is to read several classics that I already own. I did put a number on this, and I actually already made a list. So I made a list for 6 classics I want to read in 2020. They are books that are already on my shelf and have been there for a little bit. So they are The Martian Chronicles, Ray Bradbury, Tender is the Night, Fitzgerald, The Scarlet Letter, A Farewell to Arms, which is Hemingway, Housekeeping, which is a little pocket edition from Picador that I have, which is really cute, and I've wanted to read it for a while, so I just thought, why not? And then lastly, Call of the Wild. And any classics I read in addition to that, great, but those are just the 6 that I decided I already have them, so let's knock them off the TBR. My fourth goal is horror related. If you've watched my 2019 year in review for reading, you might remember that I was surprised by how little horror I read in 2019, which is just strange because I love that genre so much, and I just enjoy like the darkness, I guess. And I was just shocked that I didn't read more of it. So what I'm going to focus on in 2020 is exploring more classic horror. So if you have any suggestions, I would truly love to hear them. I know that here on YouTube, I'm really lucky to have horror friends. It's kind of a really nice community of readers because it's hard to find other horror readers, which is strange. But once you find them, people are super helpful. So if you are a horror reader and you've read classic horror that you think I should look into, let me know, because I'm just interested. And I think instead of forcing new horror to come my way, because a lot of what I read is based on what publishers are offering and what they want to promote, and I sort of choose from that. So instead of relying on them and relying on having to seek out the new horror, which just takes time, not that I'm opposed to doing that, but I just want to make it as easy as possible to explore that genre more and take a step back and look at more of the classic stuff. And I think that'll be a fun experience in itself. Another goal I have is to focus on something I enjoyed in 2019, which I think is a helpful way to set goals for your next year, is what did you enjoy and what did you miss out on? What do you want to branch out into? And so this is one of the things that I realized I enjoyed over the last year and I want to do more of. That was reading more biographies, autobiographies, the occasional memoir, but not really, just books about people, about historical people. I found them so interesting and so insightful, and really often part of these huge, crazy stories that seem like stranger than fiction or just exciting and sort of fantastical in themselves. So I want to open myself up more to that genre and just be aware as I'm seeking out books that I do like that. You know, that's not something I would shop for per se a few years ago, but now that I recognize after looking at my numbers and my 2019 reading habits, I do enjoy it. So I'm going to be on the lookout for those and think about people that I want to read and learn more about. My last hard goal for 2020 is to read more of the vintage, obscure collection that my husband and I have sort of accumulated over the years. And in particular, I want to finish reading these collections we have. 6 of them are part of this huge collection about the US basically, and we have just 6 of them. I read one called The Passing of the Frontier in 2019, and I would really like to have read the complete 6 that we have. They're these really little books, and I just think it'll be fun. I really enjoyed reading that one. So I'm curious to see more about them and their little subjects and their little span of American history. I think that'll be really fun. And then we also have these time life books on nature. Like there's one for mountains, there's one for Africa, just nature themed books with pictures, and they're older, so it's fun to see how the science has changed. I was a biology major and I just enjoy that topic, so I thought it would be fun to finally read those. And I had meant to read those in 2019, but I just never did it. So I'm putting that on the list this year, is to read those 2 sets or 2 series that we have of sort of vintage, more obscure books that people aren't really reading, but I want to read because I think it's interesting to get almost a historical account of a historical account when you're reading these books, because it's people who wrote these 80 years ago, but they're talking about something that happened 80 years before they wrote it. So it's just interesting, and I really love that dynamic. That's really it for my 2020 reading goals. I would love to hear about some of yours. I am really curious to know how this page number goal is going to go. I'm curious if it's going to make me read less, or it might make me read more in a weird way. And not having the number and not thinking about it so hard sometimes makes me do things more. Sometimes it has the opposite effect. So we're just going to have to sort of see what happens. But I'm excited to be opening the door for myself in a different reading style. And I would love to hear about your plans for the next year. So drop me a line below. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for being here, being nerds with me. I so appreciate you. And I will see you on the next one. Bye, guys.